Hi, my name is Austin Cruz with Texas Right to Life. You may remember me from my last video, Human Life Begins at Fertilization. Now, this video that you're seeing now is in response to some of the comments left on that video. And I'm responding to these comments because I think that they make some very good points that should be addressed, and so I will respond to some of the comments made and further elaborate on the points made in my last video. So I have with me some of the comments. And so I'll read them off and show my response. I've grouped these next three comments together because I applaud them for picking up on a very key point. Incredible Mouse 5 says, "My fingernails reproduce and grow. With this logic, I should stop cutting them. Cancers grow and replicate. Better stop aborting them." Pesamange says, "Dude, don't ever wash your hands. Just think of all those precious little babies you're killing." And the amazing Aussie writes, "The debate is when that zygote develops to a stage that it can be classified as human. The fact that it carries a human genome doesn't make it human, as there are a number of developmental errors that can prevent it from becoming functional." Now, like I said, I've grouped these three quotes together because I applaud them for picking up on the key point that there is a fundamental difference between just a living cell with a human genome, such as fingernails, skin cells, etc., and a living human organism. In fact, the scientific distinctions between the various cell types are based on the criteria of having different composition and different and distinct types of cell behavior. Thus, we can see by analyzing a skin cell from a tissue cell that they are very different types of cells, both in composition and function. Now, the events following sperm-egg fusion make it clear that the zygote is a new distinct human cell. But we still have the question of whether or not that zygote is a new human organism. In order to do just that, we must first make a distinction between a human cell and a human organism. An organism is defined as a complex structure of interdependent and subordinate elements whose relations and properties are largely determined by the function as a whole. It's also been defined as an individual constituted to carry on the activities of life by means of organs separate in function but mutually dependent, i.e. a living being. It is clear that the definition of an organism is based on the idea of parts interacting in the context of a coordinated whole. Because of this definition, it has been proposed that human beings can be reliably distinguished from human cells based on the criteria previously mentioned. A human being is composed of characteristic human parts such as cells, proteins, RNA, and DNA. Yet it is different from cells as it has the characteristic behavior of an organism, namely an interdependent, coordinated manner of carrying out the activities of life. Developing human beings are made of characteristic human parts, and they exhibit a human pattern of developmental behavior. From the moment of conception, a human zygote acts as a complete whole with all the parts of the zygotes interacting in an orchestrated fashion to generate the structures and relationships required for the zygote to continue developing towards its mature state. Simply having a collection of cells with human DNA molecules, however, does not create a complex human organism. It does not create the complex interrelated structure that an organism has. And they definitely do not show the global organization beyond that intrinsic to cells in isolation. For instance, a human skin cell removed from a mature body and in a lab can live and divide many times to produce a large mass of cells, but it will not reestablish the whole organism from which it was removed. Even though a zygote has one cell, the complex process of development that it orchestrates is in itself the hallmark activity of an organism, not a cell. So, as we can see, there is a distinction between a human cell and a human organism. These next two comments come from Incredible Mouse 5 and Piberto. And they read, "A clump of cells is not a thinking or feeling life. It's merely a clump of living matter that can, given the right time and support, complete a morphing into something that can think and feel." And then, "Does a spherical blastocyst of 100 cells have any experience of being human? Known fact, no." Okay. So, while it is true that a zygote or blastocyst does not have the capability to think or feel, as brainwaves are not measurable until the 6th week, but as previously stated, science shows us that it is not merely a clump of cells, but it is distinctly but it distinctly has all the criteria of an organism. So the question now becomes, does cognitive awareness imply an intrinsic value to human life? If so, does that mean that those who are comatose have lost all their value simply because of the fact that they cannot think or feel? Then shouldn't we be able to euthanize them without much more deliberation or attachment? But what happens when someone who we now think it's okay to kill because of the fact that they cannot think or feel wakes up, as happens many times? Can we still kill them? Why not? How can their intrinsic value suddenly be restored just from waking up? But if you don't buy this and still think that you should be able to destroy someone who cannot think or feel, whether it be an embryo or a comatose adult, then by that logic, we should have laws that permit murder so long as the victim is asleep while being murdered. For certain, the person asleep is not cognitively aware. Intrinsic value of a human life cannot just come and go. It must either be there at the moment that that creature enters into the human species, i.e. fertilization, or it must never have been there at all. And keep in mind the last two major times that someone used a subjective view to attach an intrinsic value to human life resulted in slavery and the Holocaust. This next quote is also from Puberto, and it reads, "Is sperm alive? Yes. Is an egg alive? Yes. Is a blood cell alive? Yes. Is a cockroach alive? Yes. And I would squish any one of them. Since the sperm and the egg are both alive, life actually existed before conception. While yes, it is true that both the sperm and the egg are alive prior to conception, both the life forms that they are and their primary functions are fundamentally different than that of a newly fertilized zygote. On the one hand, as we both know, sperm and egg are incomplete to be considered a human organism. A sperm and egg each only have 23 chromosomes, while a zygote typically has 46, the correct number that a perfect human organism should have. More than that, the primary function of the sperm and egg are different than that of a zygote. A sperm and an egg's primary function are to find each other. Once unification or fertilization takes place, changes occur in the composition of the sperm and egg, and the zygote initiates changes in its ionic composition that hardens the cellular membrane, preventing further sperm from entering the membrane. So as we see, the goal of the zygote immediately changes from that of a sperm and egg, as its focus now becomes protection and development. As we have seen that a zygote is indeed a new human organism, the type of life that existed prior to fertilization is not the same and cannot be compared with human living organisms such as a zygote. I hope I clarified some things that maybe weren't clear in the last video, and I think even further I've shown that human life does begin at fertilization.